Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, a quartet whose friendship and mischief have become legend. And today we'll uncover some fascinating and at times controversial facts about this group. Some you may already know, but others might surprise you. Enjoy the journey. Number 1. Marauders, a name barely used in the books. Surprisingly, the word Marauders is barely mentioned in the books when referring to the group of friends. In fact, it first, and essentially only, appears on the enchanted map they created, the Marauders map. The nickname as a term for their group seems to have emerged later, thanks to fans. It's possible the boys used it just to give the map a dramatic title, but in their everyday lives, they may never have called themselves that at all. Number 2, their story ended in reverse order. When Harry first activated the Marauders map, the names appeared in a now-famous sequence: Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, and as if by fate's cruel design, their deaths followed that list, in reverse. First came James, Prongs. Years later, Sirius, Padfoot. Then Peter, Wormtail. And finally, in the Battle of Hogwarts, Remus, Lupin, Moony fell. Was this just a coincidence or a deliberate move by Rowling? She's never said, but the eerie symmetry is hard to ignore. Number 3. Who was the oldest Marauder? According to official timelines, Sirius Black was born on November 3rd, 1959. James Potter and Remus Lupin followed in March 1960, just weeks apart. Peter Pettigrew's exact birth date remains unclear. So, technically, Sirius was the eldest Marauder, if only by a few months. A small detail, but one that adds a layer of nuance to their group dynamic. Number 4. Animagus forms and personality traits. Each Marauder who became an Animagus took on a form that perfectly reflected his nature. Sirius, a dog, loyal and brave. James, a stag, noble and protective, a true leader. Peter, a rat. And well, the symbolism speaks for itself. Looking back, Peter's choice of form could have been a red flag, but at the time his friends saw only what they wanted to see, sadly. Number 5. The Marauders map isn't all-seeing. The Weasley twins once told Harry, "You can see everything on this map." Well, almost everything. There are at least 2 places in Hogwarts where the map fails. The Room of Requirement, which only appears when someone desperately needs it and changes each time. The Chamber of Secrets, a legendary and hidden place even the Marauders never discovered. The map reflects only what its creators knew. Despite its magic, it's still limited by their own experiences. Number 6. Peter and Slytherin. Though all 4 Marauders were placed in Gryffindor, Peter's path there wasn't straightforward. Rowling revealed that the Sorting Hat hesitated for a long time with him, even considering Slytherin. His cunning, survival instincts, and eventual betrayal all suggest he may have belonged more to the Green and Silver House than the Lions of Gryffindor. Number 7. Lupin's fate could have been different. Among all the losses in the final chapters, Remus Lupin's death stung deeply. He wasn't just a teacher to Harry, he was a living link to his parents. Though he found love, married Tonks, and became a father, the war didn't spare him. But Rowling once admitted she considered letting Lupin survive, to give him a modest but happy post-war life. Ultimately, she chose tragedy, to highlight the loss across generations, as she later explained. Number 8. James Potter and Quidditch. Seeker or Chaser? In the Philosopher's Stone film, Harry sees a plaque showing James as a seeker, mirroring his own position on the team. It felt like a perfect legacy. But in 2000, J.K. Rowling stated that James was actually a chaser. Was it a mistake by the film crew, or did Rowling change her mind? No official explanation has ever been given, but this little inconsistency continues to fuel debates among fans to this day. Number 9. Sirius and James, a friendship that became family. Sirius Black had a house, but never a home. Grimmauld Place was cold, cruel, built on blood and hate. He grew up with whispers of purity, control, power. Not love. Never love. At 16, he ran. One bag, one name in his head, James Potter. He showed up on their doorstep, rain-soaked and angry. The Potters didn't ask questions. They pulled him inside, fed him, gave him a room, gave him peace. James just smirked. Took you long enough. From that moment, they were brothers. Not in name, in soul. They shared everything. Laughs, detentions, secrets whispered under blankets, pain no one else saw. "He's my real family," Sirius once told Remus, and he wasn't exaggerating. James never made Sirius feel like a guest. He made space for him, at his table, in his world. Sirius, once silent at dinner, started cracking jokes. Once stiff with pride, he learned to hug without flinching. The Potters changed him. Euphemia treated him like a son. Fleamont taught him how to fix a broom handle. For the first time, Sirius wasn't a Black. He was just Sirius. And it was enough. Number 10. Who really created the map? The Marauders map wasn't just a prank. It was magic at its finest. And behind it were 4 boys. But not all 4 left the same mark. Remus Lupin was the scout, the quiet one. While others slept, he transformed, roamed Hogwarts in pain and silence. He saw things no student ever did, secret halls, vanishing doors, rooms that breathed. He remembered everything. "I wasn't enchanting the parchment," Remus once said, "but I knew where to look." He drew the paths, marked the tunnels, told James and Sirius what the castle whispered. "There's a crawl space behind the 3rd floor tapestry," he said once. James grinned. "You sure you're not part ghost?" Remus just smiled. That was his gift, knowing what others missed. James Potter and Sirius Black turned maps into magic. They didn't just charm a parchment, they brought it to life. Mischief managed wasn't just a phrase, it was their signature. James handled the layering spells, complex, delicate. Sirius added bite, literally. Try reading the map without permission and it insults you. Mr. Padfoot would like to bite your nose off. They spent months perfecting it, hunched over desks, hidden under cloaks, testing spells under moonlight. Charms flickered, failed, then blazed to life. They laughed, cursed, tried again. No teacher ever noticed. Or if they did, they said nothing. Number 11. Why Lupin was never a prefect. Remus Lupin should have been prefect. Everyone thought so. Smart, polite, always calm, the quiet one among chaos. While James and Sirius set off dung bombs, Remus read. While Peter giggled, Remus sighed. He was the balance in the Marauders, their moral compass, their voice of reason. But when the prefect badges came, his name wasn't on one. It went to Lily Evans, Harry asked him years later. In Order of the Phoenix, Lupin gave a tired smile. "I wouldn't have been able to stop James and Sirius," he said. "I had enough trouble just keeping them out of serious trouble." He wasn't joking. Dumbledore saw the truth early. He knew Lupin's heart. He knew that giving him power would tear him apart. Duty or friendship? Rules or loyalty? Remus would have been stuck in the middle. So Dumbledore made a choice. Not out of doubt, but out of mercy. Remus never protested, never asked why. He understood, and he admired Lily. She was strong, honest, fair. She could scold James in front of the whole common room, and he'd actually listen. Remus could never do that, not to his best friend, but he led in quieter ways. A single word from him could freeze Sirius mid-sentence. One look could make James rethink a prank. He didn't bark orders. Number 12, Peter Pettigrew and the Secret Hideout. Peter Pettigrew, the betrayer, the coward, the rat. That's how the world remembers him. But once, long before darkness, he was just a boy, shy, nervous, often overlooked, but he watched everything, especially Remus. After full moons, Remus was always silent, pale, hurt. James cracked jokes, Sirius brought chocolate. But it was Peter who noticed the trembling hands, the way Remus stared at the floor. One morning, Peter whispered, "He needs somewhere to rest, somewhere better." No one expected that from him, but they listened. Peter found the place himself. Near the edge of the forbidden forest, an old stone hut half buried in moss, cracked roof, cold floor, but it was hidden, safe. He cleaned it, quietly, alone, stole blankets from the castle, fixed the leaks with shaky charms, even brought food. "He shouldn't wake up in the hospital wing," Peter muttered. Not again. That hut became their secret, a hideout, a refuge. Remus healed there, alone but not abandoned. Later they all used it, to plan, to laugh, to just breathe. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, and it was Peter's gift. They never called it magic, but it was. The kind born from care. Years later, Dumbledore would speak of the Room of Requirement. But the Marauders had already made their own version, built not by spells, but by heart. And Peter had lit the first spark. Sirius used to tease him. "You're no genius, Wormtail." But this was genius. A quiet kind. One that didn't need applause. Remus remembered it for life. "He helped me," he once told Tonks, when no one else thought to. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Remus says, "Peter was always the weakest." Maybe. But weakness isn't the same as cruelty. Not then, not yet. That boy in the woods, the one who carried blankets and hope, he mattered. Number 13, the quiet influence of Lily Evans. James Potter could charm a crowd in seconds, but with Lily Evans he always stumbled. It began their very first year. She walked into the common room, eyes bright, voice sharp, and James was hooked. He messed up his hair, cracked jokes, flew like a daredevil on his broomstick. All for her. Most of it backfired. Lily didn't swoon. She rolled her eyes. But James kept trying, sometimes too hard. He hexed classmates, bullied Snape, pulled stunts that made even Sirius wince. Lily didn't laugh. "You're an arrogant toe-rag," she snapped once. Everyone remembers that moment, because it hit James like a bludger to the chest. He laughed it off, but something inside him shifted. That insult wasn't just about Snape. It was about who James had become and who he wanted to be. He stopped casting spells to impress her. He started listening, helping, taking responsibility. Remus noticed. "You've gone soft," Sirius joked. James just shrugged. Maybe it's time. Lily wasn't gentle with him. She didn't flatter, she challenged. And James rose to meet her. Fewer pranks, more purpose. He even apologized to Snape once, quietly. "I was a prat," he said. Snape didn't care, but Lily heard it. And that meant everything. By 6th year, she saw the change. James wasn't just chasing her anymore, he was growing up. Head boy, confident, still cheeky, but better, real. They began walking together after rounds, talking, laughing. The tension melted into something warmer, something solid. The Marauders felt it too. James wasn't just the ringleader. He was their anchor, their protector. Lily's presence steadied him, which steadied all of them. Remus opened up more. Sirius stopped picking fights just to feel alive. Even Peter stood taller. Their friendship deepened, not just because of magic, but because of her. She gave them direction. Number 14. Why Lupin never tried to cure himself. Remus Lupin never begged for mercy. He didn't curse the moon, didn't blame fate. He simply endured. After Fenrir Greyback bit him as a boy, his world changed forever. No cure, no hope, just the wolf. In a magical world where bones heal in seconds and death can be reversed, his curse was permanent. That made it worse. Rowling once said it straight. Lycanthropy can't be cured. It's not a disease, it's a dark curse. Remus knew that. Still he searched, he wandered. From back alleys in Nocturne to silent healers in Eastern Europe, a woman in Romania swore she could burn the beast out. She couldn't. The pain almost killed him. Other potions made him sick. Some nearly drove him mad, but he kept trying, because he had to believe in something. Only one thing ever helped: wolfsbane, a complex potion, almost impossible to brew. But Severus Snape made it. For Lupin, despite everything between them, it didn't stop the transformation, but it gave Remus his mind. That was enough. "I can think," he told Dumbledore. "I can remember who I am." For the first time, he wasn't just a creature. He was still Remus, but shame ran deep. He lived in cheap flats, wore second-hand robes, refused steady jobs. Not because he was lazy, but because people feared him, even wizards, even those who knew better. "They see the wolf first," he once told Sirius, "then maybe the man." Still, he never let bitterness win. He joined the Order of the Phoenix. He went undercover in werewolf packs that served Voldemort, risked everything, tried to bring them back, tried to show them another way. Dumbledore once said, "Remus is the bravest man I know." He wasn't wrong, but the fear stayed. When Tonks loved him, Remus backed away. "I'm too old, too poor, too dangerous." He believed love wasn't for monsters, but Tonks didn't care. She saw the man, not the moon, and she pulled him back. Number 15. James Potter was a skilled duelist. James Potter wasn't just a prankster or a Quidditch star. He was a master of dueling, and Hogwarts knew it. Professor McGonagall once said he was one of the most gifted students she had ever taught. That meant something coming from someone who had watched decades of students pass through her classroom. James had a natural instinct for spells, especially defensive and disarming ones. But talent alone didn't make him great. It was the fire behind it. He and Sirius Black turned the empty corridors of Hogwarts into their training ground. Late at night, under the flickering torchlight, they would duel for hours. Spells cracked like thunder through the stone halls. "Stupefy! Protego!" The boys laughed, sweat dripping from their brows, pushing each other to the edge. They weren't just playing, they were preparing. Perhaps they didn't know for what yet, but war was coming. James's wand moved like a conductor's baton, sharp, elegant, and fast. In their 5th year, he once disarmed Mulciber, a future Death Eater, in front of half the school. One flick, and Mulciber's wand flew through the air. The common room buzzed for days. Lily Evans, who wasn't easily impressed, had raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Not bad, Potter." That was as close to a compliment as James got back then. His skill didn't stop with teenage rivalries. After graduation, when Voldemort's rise turned the world cold and dangerous, James joined the Order of the Phoenix. He didn't hesitate. Neither did Sirius. The spells they once fired for fun became weapons of survival. James faced Death Eaters in dark forests, narrow alleys, and even the skies. He once held off 3 at once in Bristol, giving a wounded ally time to escape. The Order called him fearless. He just smiled and said, "Someone has to stand between them and the rest of us." Number 16. What happened to Pettigrew's wand? In the dim corridors of Malfoy Manor, heavy with dread and betrayal, a quiet moment passed, unnoticed by many. A moment not marked by thunder or screams, but by the snap of splintering wood. It was the moment Peter Pettigrew, once known as Wormtail, met his end. Not by wand or spell, but by the very magic of guilt that Voldemort had underestimated. And with his last breath, something else was lost too. His wand. It wasn't just a piece of wood and core. It was his last remaining tie to the magical world, a world he had both served and betrayed. That wand, slender, loyal, and tainted, vanished from the story as if the earth itself had swallowed it in shame. But where did it go? What happened to it? And why was its disappearance never addressed again? Though the films offered a visual version of his death, they omitted the fate of his wand entirely. In the book Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling describes Pettigrew's final moments with cold precision. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione were imprisoned in the cellar of Malfoy Manor, and Pettigrew descended with his silver hand gleaming under the torchlight, his final fate was sealed not by them, but by his own internal conflict. Harry reminded him of the life debt he owed, a debt born in the shadows of the Shrieking Shack when Peter had hesitated to kill. "You're going to kill me?" Harry asked him. "After I saved your life?" That sentence was a turning point. The silver hand, a gift from Voldemort, a reward for loyalty, turned on him with merciless strength. The silver fingers closed around Pettigrew's throat. He was turning blue. His eyes rolled upward. The wand slipped from his hand. That moment wasn't just about physical death. It was the symbolic collapse of everything Pettigrew clung to. In that second, he lost his breath, his master's favor, and his wand, the very tool that once helped destroy lives. But what makes this detail even more chilling is what J.K. Rowling said in a 2007 interview. When asked about the wand's fate, she remarked that Pettigrew's wand was broken at the moment of his death and never recovered. That quiet sentence, tucked away in a post-finale conversation, holds enormous narrative weight. In the wizarding world, wands can be buried, stolen, even inherited. But a wand that breaks in the instant of its master's death, without any outside force, suggests something deeper, as if magic itself rejected Pettigrew's legacy. It's rare for a wand to snap spontaneously. Normally wands are broken intentionally or by combat. Neville Longbottom's first wand, for example, was shattered during a battle with Death Eaters and had to be replaced. Ron Weasley's wand, damaged by the Whomping Willow, became nearly useless until he received a new one. But Peter's wand didn't break in a duel. It wasn't hit by a curse or flung across the room. It broke when he died, in that quiet act of self-destruction. Or perhaps divine justice. The very magic that had once protected him had judged him unworthy in the end. Symbolically, the wand represented more than just magical capability. For Peter, it was his last illusion of power. Once he had been a marauder, running across the Hogwarts grounds in Animagus form, laughing with James, Sirius, and Remus. He had once held his wand high against the world, but by the time he returned to Voldemort, it had become an instrument of fear. That same wand had helped resurrect Voldemort during the ritual in the Goblet of Fire. That same wand had tortured, threatened, and betrayed. And then, in a final betrayal, not of others, but of self, it perished with him. What's even more intriguing is that Peter's wand was not used by anyone else after his death. In the books, wand lore is clear. The wand chooses the wizard, but a wand can shift allegiance if won through conquest. Draco's wand, for instance, transferred its loyalty to Harry when disarmed at Malfoy Manor. The Elder Wand famously passed between Dumbledore, Draco, and Harry by such transitions. But Peter's wand didn't change hands. It was broken. No allegiance to shift, no second chance. The narrative refused to let it be passed down, as though no one else was worthy of the same treachery. One might ask, if someone had found the wand, could it have been mended? After all, Harry's Phoenix Feather wand was snapped and later repaired using the Elder Wand in Deathly Hallows, but that was a rare exception, possible only due to the immense power of the Deathly Hallows. Pettigrew's wand, however, was not just physically broken, it was erased. Nothing remained to fix. It is never mentioned among the relics left in the ruins of the manor. Even scavengers never find it. No one loots the wand, no one speaks of it again. This vanishing act is powerful precisely because of its silence. In storytelling, what's left unsaid can haunt longer than what's declared. Peter Pettigrew, the betrayer of Lily and James, the servant of the Dark Lord, did not get a glorious end. Nor was he honoured by his master. Even Voldemort referred to him with contempt. "You're a fool, Wormtail." In death, he was given no rights, no memory, not even a wand to mark that he had ever wielded power. The broken wand was the final erasure of his place in magical history. Imagine the moment, a dim room, the air thick with dust and secrets. The silver hand tightens, the wand drops, and perhaps it hits the cold stone floor. Once, maybe twice, a small crack, a splinter, a final puff of residual magic, and then silence. In that stillness, the wand, bun, and the wizard who clutched it was lost. No fanfare, no thunderclap, just the sound of failure. Number 17, Sirius's unique Patronus. In the twilight shadows of the wizarding world, few figures loom as enigmatically and tragically as Sirius Black. His tale is not just of wrongful imprisonment and bloodline betrayal. It is also one of profound loyalty, untamed spirit, and a bond that transcended family and time. Central to his mystical identity is his Patronus, a magical embodiment of his soul, shaped unmistakably as a massive, shaggy black dog, the same form he adopted as an unregistered Animagus. For most witches and wizards, the shape of their Patronus is independent of their Animagus form, reflecting instead an intimate aspect of their inner being. But Sirius was different. His Patronus and Animagus were one and the same. And this rare alignment tells us more about the man behind the madness than perhaps any tale ever could. The Patronus charm, one of the most advanced defensive spells, calls forth a protective force of pure light. It is born from the caster's most powerful positive emotions, memories of safety, joy, and hope. For Harry Potter, it was his memory of flying with his father. For Hermione, it was a silver otter, her favourite animal. But for Sirius, the dog was not merely an animal he liked, it was who he was at his core. His Animagus form, a large black dog, earned him the nickname Padfoot among his friends. It was a form he embraced so entirely that even after 12 years in Azkaban, the world still remembered that name whispered in connection with his escape. His Patronus, when he had the strength to conjure it, matched this form precisely, an unusual phenomenon that spoke volumes about his spirit. This rare matching of Animagus and Patronus forms has precedent, but it remains a profound insight into a wizard's psyche. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, we learn that Tonks's patronus changes to reflect her love for Remus Lupin, shifting into a wolf. Emotional transformation can change the patronus, and in Sirius's case, perhaps the reverse is true. His love for those he held dear shaped both his magical identity and his chosen disguise. The dog, loyal and fierce, became a living metaphor for everything he stood for. Sirius was fiercely protective of Harry. He saw in the boy not just the son of his dearest friend James, but also a second chance, a person he could love and shield, as he had once promised to do for James and Lily. When James was murdered by Voldemort and Sirius failed to prevent it, a chasm of guilt swallowed him. 12 years in Azkaban didn't just cage his body, it buried his spirit beneath remorse. Yet when he finally emerged, gaunt and haunted, his drive to protect Harry burned brighter than ever. "You are truly your father's son, Harry," Sirius whispered once, his voice lined with grief and pride. It was as though in shielding Harry he could honor James's memory, reclaim a part of himself. The black dog was also a symbol of Sirius's self-perception. In folklore, a black dog often represents death, mystery, or the burden of a cursed soul. Sirius, falsely accused of murder, cast aside by his family, and imprisoned without trial, had every reason to see himself as a shadow in the world. Yet he never surrendered to the darkness. The dog form, which might have been a grim symbol, became instead his banner of rebellion and resilience. It allowed him to escape Azkaban, to move unseen through the wizarding world, and ultimately to keep vigil over Harry. In his darkest hour, he became the guardian he had always sworn to be. J.K. Rowling once revealed in an interview that Sirius's Animagus form was not chosen at random. She described Sirius as a loyal and wild spirit, one who would never be tamed, even by prison bars. The dog, a large, intimidating, yet faithful creature, fit his personality perfectly. Unlike a stag, noble and distant, or a cat, solitary and clever, the dog is emotional, bound to its pack, and defends those it loves with reckless abandon. Sirius's form was not an act of disguise, it was a declaration of identity. The idea that his patronus matched this form is not just poetic, it is deeply symbolic. The patronus is a reflection of the wizard's truest self. For most, this self is hidden, revealed only in the silver light of the spell. But Sirius had lived as the dog for so long, had poured so much of his soul into that form, that the two could no longer be separated. He was Padfoot as much as he was Sirius. When he raised his wand and cast the spell, what emerged was not a protective symbol, apart from himself, but a perfect image of his very being. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the readers meet Sirius not as a man, but as a myth, a shadowy fugitive accused of betrayal and murder, lurking in the dark corners of Hogwarts. His Animagus form becomes his mask, his means of moving through a world that has condemned him. And it is as Padfoot that he first draws near to Harry, not daring to show his face, but watching, waiting, protecting. It is no coincidence that in the climactic scenes of the book, when Sirius finally reveals himself, it is in defense of Harry, standing between him and danger, both as man and beast. One of the most powerful moments in Order of the Phoenix is the scene in the Department of Mysteries. Surrounded by Death Eaters, Sirius duels with ferocity and grace. "Nice one, James!" he shouts to Harry in a moment of adrenaline and memory colliding. For a flash, he is no longer the broken man, but the laughing friend, the brave warrior. And it is here, amidst the chaos and magic, that his identity blazes brightest. Though the Patronus spell is not used in that moment, the idea of who Sirius truly is, A protector, a fighter, a dogged companion is burned into the page. Number 18. The hidden meaning behind the Marauders' nicknames. James Potter was never just Prongs. That nickname, simple as it may sound, carried the weight of myth and legacy. In his Animagus form, James transformed into a majestic stag, a creature of the wild whose antlers crowned him not just as a guardian of the forest, but also as a leader among men. The symbolism runs deep. In many cultures, the stag represents strength, renewal, and nobility. To his friends, James was the unspoken leader, the beating heart of the Marauders. When Harry first sees his father's form in The Prisoner of Azkaban, he doesn't understand the full depth. My father's patronus. It was a stag, he whispers. But for those who knew James, the stag wasn't just a patronus. It was his spirit made visible. He was proud, strong-willed, with a protective instinct that shone most brightly in the face of danger. And yet, like the stag hunted in shadows, his end would come prematurely, a noble creature slain by darkness. Sirius Black, on the other hand, was Padfoot, the great black dog that padded silently through the night, both protector and outcast. Dogs are loyal, but strays, wanderers, live on the edge of civilization, never truly belonging. Sirius was born into the cold, rigid traditions of the Black family, but he rejected them with fire and fury. He ran, not just from home, but from everything his lineage tried to place upon him. His dog form was symbolic of this self-imposed exile. "I did my waiting, 12 years of it, in Azkaban," he roared, in The Prisoner of Azkaban, and there's more pain in those words than rage. Padfoot was the nickname his closest friends gave him, a name that kept him tethered to them even in the darkest days. The dog, while often seen as a loyal companion, also represents freedom of spirit. Sirius was fiercely loyal to James, Remus, and even Peter, once. And like a dog who loses his pack, he never stopped searching for the family he chose, not the one he was born into. Remus Lupin bore the heaviest name of them all, Moony, a soft name, almost tender, but weighted with the agony of transformation. The moon ruled him, dominated him, forced him to bend and break each month in a dance of bones and blood. It is a terrible transformation. I was separated from humans to bite only myself, he once confided. The name Moony wasn't cruel, it was an embrace. His friends didn't shy away from the truth of his condition. They honored it, even made it part of their own identities. They became animagi to join him during his full moon nights, risking themselves to ensure he was never alone. The name Moony was, in a strange way, a reclaiming of pain, a way to own what had once made him a monster in the eyes of others. Through it, Remus became more than a werewolf. He became the soul of compassion and quiet strength within the Marauders. Then there was Peter Pettigrew, Wormtail, the rat, the tail that always followed. The least heroic of the four, but perhaps the most tragically revealing. His Animagus form was a small, twitchy creature, a perfect metaphor for his personality. Peter never led, never stood alone. He survived by attaching himself to power. First to James and Sirius, basking in their glory. Then, after fear took root in his heart, he turned to Voldemort, trading loyalty for safety. In the Goblet of Fire, Voldemort sneers, "You return to me, not out of loyalty, but out of fear." Peter nods, broken. The name Wormtail reflects not only his Animagus form, but also his tendency to slither, to hide, to cling to stronger figures. It is a nickname that mocks, yes, but also explains. Among giants, he was the shadow. And when the time came to choose, he followed survival, not love. What makes the Marauders unforgettable isn't just their names, but the way those names capture their very essence. These weren't arbitrary nicknames, they were carefully chosen reflections of identity, brotherhood, and tragedy. In the Marauders map, they signed their work not with full names, but with their chosen titles: Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Not James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter, but the souls they had become through pain, friendship, and rebellion. Consider their greatest creation, the Marauders map, a magical document that could track every soul within Hogwarts walls, a feat born not of brilliance alone, but of deep understanding of human behavior. To make such a map, they had to know more than magic. They had to know people. And in those identities, Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs, they embedded that knowledge. Each name on the map was a mask and a revelation. Anyone who used the map unknowingly invoked their spirits. James was the antlered protector. Think of his final moments. He stood unarmed against Voldemort to buy Lily time. There was no hesitation. The stag's spirit, proud, stubborn, sacrificing, lived and died in him. His nickname became a prophecy. He was always destined to stand between darkness and those he loved. And when Harry conjured his patronus by the lake, he unknowingly called upon that same spirit, a stag. It wasn't my dad, Harry later realized. It was me, but it was him too, wasn't it? That moment, full of paradox, shows how deeply intertwined names and legacies had become. Sirius, the Wanderer, never lost his wildness. Even in the confines of Grimmauld Place, he paced like a caged animal. Dogs are meant to run, to protect, to howl at injustice. He was wrongfully imprisoned, betrayed by the one they thought weakest, Wormtail. And yet, he never truly broke. "You think the dead we loved ever truly leave us?" Dumbledore asked. For Sirius, that was true in reverse. He never left James, not really. His Animagus form allowed him to cross the country in disguise, risking recapture just to be near Harry. And when he died in Order of the Phoenix, it was mid-battle, leaping through the veil like a dog chasing after a threat, unafraid. Number 19. What happened to James Potter's family home? Few places in the wizarding world carry the same ghostly resonance as the Potter cottage in Godric's Hollow, where James and Lily met their tragic end on that fateful Halloween night in 1981. Fans often visit this ruined landmark in their minds, picturing the shattered roof, the scorched walls, the sign with hundreds of messages left in chalk. But this cottage, while forever etched in history, was not the only residence that bore the Potter name. Hidden from the pages of the main narrative lies a second, far grander estate, one that belonged to James's parents, Fleamont and Euphemia Potter. This home, once radiant with magical life and legacy, faded quietly into history, carrying with it its own secrets and sorrows. Fleamont and Euphemia were not just ordinary wizards of modest means. Fleamont, an innovator in potion-making, had built an entire fortune on his invention of Sleek Easy's hair potion, a product so wildly successful that it is still sold at Madame Malkin's and other reputable apothecaries decades later. He sold the company at a great profit before retiring with his beloved Euphemia to a sprawling estate located in the countryside near Hampstead, a green area not far from central London. Their manor, shielded by ancient enchantments, could not be seen by muggles, nor approached by unwelcome guests. It was a place of quiet refinement, a library with ceiling-high bookshelves, stained glass windows enchanted to show the seasons, and gardens that bloomed with both magical and mundane flora. The Potters were not just wealthy, they were cultured, respected, and kind. When James was born in 1960, the manor came alive with laughter and joy, The boy grew up surrounded by luxury but never spoiled. Euphemia, known for her sharp tongue and even sharper heart, made sure James knew compassion and humility. Fleamont, despite his aging frame, would race James across the garden lawn on enchanted broomsticks, much to the delight of their house elf, Gilly, who often scolded her master for acting like a child at your age, sir. These were golden years, tranquil, removed from the world's chaos, filled with love. But as Voldemort's shadow began creeping across Britain in the 1970s, even the safety of their estate began to feel brittle. Fleamont and Euphemia did not live to see the darkest days of the First Wizarding War. Both fell ill in the late 70s, perhaps due to age, though some speculate, with hushed tones, that a curse or dark influence had accelerated their decline. They were not old enough to die, Remus Lupin once told Sirius in a private letter, written while both were in hiding, and yet they faded so quickly as if something unseen was draining them. Euphemia passed first, followed mere weeks later by Fleamont. James, then in his late teens, was devastated. In a single season he lost both parents and inherited the family estate. It is crucial to note that this inheritance was not only material. James inherited not just the bricks and spells, but also the family's legacy, one steeped in quiet heroism and resistance to tyranny. The manor, now his, remained under the same protective enchantments, but James rarely visited it. After marrying Lily Evans, they chose to move to Godric's Hollow, a deliberate decision. He wanted to raise Harry somewhere simple, somewhere grounded in old magic. Dumbledore once told Minerva McGonagall, the Potter's Hampstead estate was powerful, yes, but also heavy with memory. After James and Lily's deaths, the matter of the Hampstead estate grew murky. Legally it passed to Harry, but as an infant, he had no claim nor comprehension of such an inheritance. Sirius Black, named Harry's godfather, was entrusted with all of James's belongings, but within hours of the Potters' deaths, Sirius was arrested for the betrayal and supposed murder of Peter Pettigrew. With no legal heir able to claim or manage the property, and Sirius imprisoned in Azkaban, the estate was left untouched. The Ministry of Magic quietly intervened. In a rare comment during a 2005 interview, J.K. Rowling herself stated, "The Potter family's ancestral home was eventually acquired by the Ministry under the pretense of national magical interest. They deemed it unsuitable for private ownership, given its history and magical significance." Behind this bureaucratic explanation was something more human, a wish to preserve what was left of the war, to protect the magical echoes that lingered within its walls. And those echoes were potent. According to reports from ministry historians, the manor's rooms were still steeped in memory. Portraits of long-gone Potters whispered at night, and the grandfather clock still marked the location of James as beyond the veil. It was Kingsley Shacklebolt, then an Auror, who first proposed that the house be repurposed. "We can't let it rot," he told Amelia Bones in a recovered transcript from a 1982 Wizengamot session. "Let it be a place of healing, a refuge for those broken by the war." And so in the quiet months following Voldemort's defeat, the estate was transformed. The Grand Hall, once filled with laughter and music, became a place for memory therapy. Bedrooms became recovery chambers for spell damage. The rose gardens, once Euphemia's pride, were rebloomed with calming charms to soothe victims of Cruciatus. It became known not as the Potter Estate, but as the Stag House, a tribute to James's Animagus form and his role in the Order of the Phoenix. Still, not all welcomed this transformation. Sirius Black, upon his escape from Azkaban in 1993, briefly tried to visit the property under disguise. According to an Auror report dated that same year, a black dog-shaped figure was seen circling the outer boundaries of the estate, stopped by the lingering enchantments and the Ministry's new wards. He howled once and disappeared, the report said. One cannot help but imagine the heartbreak in that single sound. A ghost returning home to find the door barred by time. When Harry finally came of age, he did visit the estate, though only once. In 1998, after the final defeat of Voldemort, he returned with Hermione and Ron. Hermione described the experience in a private letter later found in the Hogwarts archives. It was like stepping into someone else's memory. The house welcomed Harry. The portraits bowed. Even the furniture responded to his presence, rearranging slightly as if in recognition. And Harry just stood there, silent, as if afraid to breathe too loudly. He did not stay long. Perhaps the weight of too many ghosts, too many could-have-beens, made the place unbearable. Despite owning the legal rights after the fall of Voldemort, Harry never reclaimed the estate. Instead, he let it remain as a refuge, a quiet sanctuary for those needing healing. Some legacies, he told Rita Skeeter in a rare 2003 interview, shouldn't be privatized. That house helped save lives. That's what my parents would have wanted. Indeed, the very essence of Fleamont and Euphemia, their quiet dignity, their kindness, their belief in doing good quietly, lived on in the estate's new purpose. There are whispers, even today, that the house holds more than just history. Some healers who work at Stag House speak of strange occurrences. A music box in the nursery sometimes plays lullabies unbidden. The library occasionally opens to a page from Fleamont's handwritten journals. And the west window, the one where young James once waited for his father to return from errands, glows golden every evening at twilight, though no charm was ever found to explain it. It's just the house remembering love, one healer said. It is perhaps fitting that the house remains not as a museum or monument, but as a living place of hope. It never fell into ruin like the Godric's hollow cottage. It never became haunted by bitterness. It simply adapted, as the Potters always did, to serve a greater good, and through its continued purpose it gives shelter to the very ideals that James and Lily died for. Number 20. Which professors knew about Lupin's secret? Of all the secrets whispered through the ancient corridors of Hogwarts, few were guarded with as much care as the truth about Remus Lupin. It was a truth that could have ruined his life, even in a place as magical and accepting as Hogwarts' School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The word werewolf didn't simply bring fear. It brought stigma, suspicion, and isolation. For young Remus, bitten as a child by Fenrir Greyback, every full moon was a prison of pain. But Hogwarts offered him something extraordinary: safety, friendship, and acceptance. And it began with a single man, Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore was the first to know. He had arranged everything from the Whomping Willow to the secret tunnel leading to the Shrieking Shack. When Remus was accepted into Hogwarts, it was not out of pity, but out of deep conviction. I do not believe a child should be punished for the circumstances of their affliction, Dumbledore once told him. He never treated Remus like a danger, but like a student, a boy who deserved a chance at life and education. But Dumbledore also knew that secrecy was essential. Most students and even staff remained in the dark. Yet not all. Minerva McGonagall, strict and precise as the ticking hands of the clock in her classroom, knew the truth as well. As deputy headmistress she had to know, but her knowledge did not lead to fear, only to discretion. Minerva has always been one of the most principled people I know, Dumbledore had once said. And it was true, McGonagall never breathed a word. She watched Lupin grow, excel in transfiguration, struggle some months, but never give up. Her trust in him was absolute, perhaps strengthened by the knowledge that he had 3 fiercely loyal friends by his side. Those friends, James Potter, Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew, didn't learn the truth from professors. They figured it out on their own, as Marauders do. The pattern of Remus's illnesses, the sudden disappearances, the scars he tried to hide, it all became too suspicious. But instead of shrinking away in fear, they chose something astonishing. They became animagi. You don't know what it's like, neither of you. You've never had to live with the idea that one day, someone would find out. Lupin would confess years later, his voice thick with emotion. They did find out, and they chose loyalty. But returning to the professors, there is another name, not often spoken in this context, who perhaps knew more than he let on, Madame Pomfrey. The school nurse had a reputation for being stern but kind. It was she who tended to Remus after each monthly transformation, healing his wounds and easing his suffering. The shrieking shack was where he transformed, away from prying eyes, but he never returned unscathed. She never asked questions, Lupin once said. But she always had the potion ready, always knew when to expect me. It's hard to believe someone so attentive would not connect the dots. Pomfrey's quiet support was as vital as any protection Dumbledore offered. She never treated Remus like a monster. She simply treated his injuries, and in that there was a silent understanding. No words, no judgments, just care. It's the kind of detail that tells you everything about the heart of a person. Then there was Professor Slughorn. During Lupin's time at Hogwarts, Horace Slughorn was the potions master, affable, ambitious, and keen on collecting exceptional students. Lupin was brilliant in many subjects, including potions, but Slughorn, sharp as he was sociable, was not easily fooled. He observed patterns, nuances, behaviors, a student missing school once a month like clockwork, a student who returned pale, injured, and quiet. Slughorn noticed. Of course he noticed. It was never confirmed outright, but Slughorn's hints were too precise to be coincidence. In one of his conversations with Dumbledore, heard through the echoing corridor by accident, Slughorn had said, "He's a remarkable boy, Albus, but there are signs. Not that I'd ever breathe a word." And Dumbledore replied softly, "Thank you, Horace. That's all I ask." Respect among colleagues meant many things, and in this case, it meant silence. Slughorn's silence wasn't cowardice, it was a choice. He respected Dumbledore and trusted his judgment. And perhaps he saw the same thing others close to Remus had seen, a gentle, thoughtful young man trying to live with something unimaginably difficult. And then there was Severus Snape. Though younger than Lupin and not yet a professor during the Marauders' time at Hogwarts, Snape's knowledge of Lupin's secret would come later, and under very different circumstances. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Snape reveals his long-standing bitterness when he says, "He has been helping his old friend into the castle with a werewolf." Snape knew. He had always known, or at least suspected since his student days, but Snape wasn't told. He found out. James Potter had once saved his life from a trap set by Sirius, who had foolishly told Snape how to access the tunnel beneath the Whomping Willow. Snape was seconds away from seeing Remus in werewolf form when James pulled him back. After that, Dumbledore had made Snape swear to secrecy. "He's dangerous," Snape had always insisted. "You have no idea what he's capable of." But deep down, it wasn't fear that drove Snape. It was hatred. Hatred for the Marauders, and especially for Sirius and James. Snape's loathing clouded his view of Remus. Even when Remus returned as the defense against the dark arts teacher in Harry's 3rd year, Snape did not let go of that bitterness. He went so far as to reveal Lupin's secret to the students indirectly, by accidentally letting slip the information that Lupin had forgotten to take his wolfsbane potion. It was a cruel move, born of jealousy and long-standing grudges, but ironically, even Snape's actions only proved that others, many others, had kept that secret safe for years. It's worth noting that Professor Flitwick and Professor Sprout likely remained unaware, not because they weren't observant, but because they respected the boundaries set by Dumbledore. Some truths were simply not theirs to know. Hogwarts, despite all its mysteries and dangers, operated with a strange kind of equilibrium. Secrets were not uncommon, but they were handled with discretion. Dumbledore, as headmaster, controlled the flow of information tightly, and Lupin's secret was not something he shared lightly. Lupin's own behavior contributed to the secret staying safe. He was humble, quiet, and careful never to draw attention to himself. Even during the days of the Marauders, he was the calmest of the four. James was the leader, Sirius the rebel, Peter the follower, and Remus was the soul, said an old Gryffindor student years later. He never acted like someone dangerous. In fact, most who met him described him as one of the kindest students in the school, but kindness did not protect him from self-doubt. "Do you think they'll still want to be my friends if they find out?" he had once asked McGonagall, years before the Marauders discovered the truth. Her reply had been simple. "They will if they are worthy of you." And they were. For years they remained his anchor, transforming themselves so they could accompany him on full moon nights. No professor at Hogwarts ever did more than Dumbledore to support him, but those boys gave Remus something even more powerful than a safe place to transform. They gave him freedom. It's also interesting to consider how this secret shaped Remus's adult life. Years later, when he returned to Hogwarts to teach, many of the professors remembered him fondly, and still with that same quiet discretion. Pomfrey never treated him differently. McGonagall welcomed him with a knowing smile. Even Slughorn, when he returned in Harry's 6th year, made a passing comment that hinted he had always respected Lupin's brilliance. There is no moment more telling than when Lupin says to Harry, "I have been shunned all my adult life because of what I am. The only place that ever accepted me was Hogwarts." That acceptance didn't come from the walls or the spells. It came from the people, from Dumbledore's unwavering support, from Pomfrey's gentle care, from McGonagall's watchful protection, and even from Slughorn's quiet understanding. Number 21. What role did Severus Snape play in the Marauders' story? Of all the complex figures in the Harry Potter universe, Severus Snape stands out as one of the most enigmatic, especially when viewed through the lens of the Marauders' story. From the moment young Snape stepped onto the Hogwarts Express, his path crossed with that of James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, boys who would later call themselves the Marauders. What began as simple schoolyard rivalry soon evolved into a deeply personal and painful entanglement that would define much of Snape's life and shape the fate of the wizarding world. Severus Snape's introduction to Hogwarts was marked by his friendship with Lily Evans and his isolation from the rest of his peers. Sorted into Slytherin, he quickly became a target for the Gryffindor Marauders, particularly James Potter and Sirius Black, whose boisterous, rule-breaking personalities clashed with Snape's dark, brooding presence. But their mutual animosity wasn't born from mere house rivalry. It was deeper, more visceral. Snape represented everything James despised: ambition without charm, talent without popularity, and an affinity for the dark arts that made him all the more suspicious. Their feud escalated with each year. Snape, often alone and nursing his growing bitterness, retaliated by inventing dark spells, one of which, Sectum Sempra, would later have dire consequences. In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry finds the spell written in Snape's own textbook, marked for enemies. This wasn't just a spell, it was a silent scream from a boy consumed by rage and humiliation, sharpening his mind like a blade to defend himself from those who taunted him. One of the most defining moments of Snape's relationship with the Marauders came in their 5th year, during the infamous incident by the lake. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry witnesses the memory in Snape's pensive. Snape was on the ground, his robes pulled up to his waist, and James was waving his wand like a conductor's baton, making him spin in mid-air. It was a brutal display of dominance, James and Sirius publicly humiliating Snape for no reason other than their own amusement. Lily, the one person who had always stood by Snape, intervenes, but Snape, wounded and humiliated, calls her the unforgivable word, mudblood. That single word shattered their friendship. Lily's look of betrayal and her cold goodbye would haunt Snape for the rest of his life. In truth, that moment marked the beginning of the end. Without Lily's kindness to anchor him, Snape plunged deeper into the world of Slytherin elitism and the shadows of the dark arts. He began associating with future Death Eaters, sealing his fate in Voldemort's ranks. Yet deep down, the pain of losing her was more unbearable than any physical torment. Then came the night of the Whomping Willow incident, a moment that nearly ended in tragedy. Sirius Black, in a cruel prank, told Snape how to reach the tunnel where Remus Lupin, transformed into a werewolf, awaited. Had James Potter not intervened, dragging Snape back at the last moment, Severus would have been mauled or killed. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Lupin recalls, "If James hadn't intervened, I would be a murderer." Snape's hatred only deepened. Though James had saved him, he did so not out of kindness, but to undo Sirius's recklessness. To Snape, it wasn't heroism, it was humiliation. He was now bound by a life debt to someone he despised. This event shaped Snape's obsession with the Marauders' secrets. He became fixated on Lupin's lycanthropy, determined to expose the truth. When Dumbledore hired Lupin in Harry's 3rd year, Snape brewed his wolfsbane potion, but not without resentment. His bitterness remained, simmering just beneath the surface. The Marauders had robbed him of dignity, of friendship, of innocence, and he would never forget it. But the tragedy of Snape lies not only in what was done to him, but in what he became. His entry into Voldemort's ranks was driven by a desire for power, for control, for a place where he would no longer be the victim. Yet even there, his past haunted him. When Voldemort targeted the Potters, Snape begged him to spare Lily. Not James, not Harry, only her. It was a desperate, selfish plea, but it revealed his deepest wound. When she died, Snape broke. His conversation with Dumbledore, shown in Deathly Hallows, reveals the raw grief he carried. "You have no idea what I have done," he cries. Dumbledore, ever calm, replies, "You disgust me. You do not care then about the deaths of her husband and child. They can die as long as you have what you want." Snape's silence is damning. He didn't love Harry, he loathed him, but he loved Lily so fiercely that he agreed to protect the boy as penance. Thus began Snape's double life. To the world he remained a bitter, sneering professor with a cruel tongue. But behind the scenes he was Dumbledore's most valuable agent, a man who had betrayed Voldemort not out of ideology, but out of love. The Marauders, once his tormentors, were now dead or disgraced. James, whom he had loathed, was gone. Sirius, falsely imprisoned. Remus, an outcast. Peter, of all people, betrayed them all. Snape, in his own way, outlasted them, but the victory was hollow. His hatred for James never faded, and he projected that loathing onto Harry. "You are just like your father," he snarled in Philosopher's Stone, punishing Harry for sins not his own. Yet, even in his cruelty, he never failed in his duty. He protected Harry from Quirrell, from the curse during the Quidditch match, and later from far worse. His love for Lily bound him to the boy he couldn't stand. Snape's presence haunted every moment of Harry's life at Hogwarts. Every sneer, every unjust punishment, every refusal to praise him was rooted in a past that Harry never understood, until it was too late. Only in Snape's final moments, as he whispered, "Look at me. You have your mother's eyes," did the truth begin to emerge. Harry, like his father, had bullied Snape. But unlike James, Harry never knew the whole story. Snape wasn't just a bitter professor, he was a man who had lost everything and chose to fight quietly until the end. The Marauders' story was one of camaraderie, mischief, and tragedy. Snape was the outsider, the shadow to their brightness, but without him their story is incomplete. He was their mirror, their consequence. For every prank they played, Snape bore the scar. For every moment of their joy, he carried the silence of rejection. And yet in the end, he stood on the same side as they had, giving his life for the same cause. Snape's dynamic with Sirius remained venomous until the very end. They loathed each other, two men bound by the same past and the same woman they both loved, Lily, the friend Snape had lost, the symbol of a life he never had. Their bickering in Order of the Phoenix was more than personal. It was the last battle in a war that had never truly ended. "You're pathetic," Sirius spat. "You're nothing but a coward." But in truth, it was Snape's courage, silent, bitter, and sacrificial, that ultimately changed everything. Perhaps the most poignant irony is that Snape, who had been mocked by the Marauders for his interest in the dark arts, became the one who ultimately thwarted Voldemort's plans from within. Peter, the weakest of the four, betrayed them. James died trying to protect his family. Sirius was imprisoned and then killed. Lupin, noble and kind, was left to grieve. Only Snape remained, the boy who was never welcome in their circle, now the man who bore their legacy on his shoulders. Even in death, Snape's role is misunderstood. He is neither hero nor villain, neither saint nor monster. He is the grey that exists between black and white, a boy twisted by pain, driven by love, and ultimately redeemed by sacrifice. The Marauders called themselves mischief makers. Snape called himself the half-blood prince. But both names were masks, hiding wounds too deep for words. In the end, Harry understood. Naming his son Albus Severus was more than a tribute. It was an acknowledgement of a painful truth. "He was the bravest man I ever knew," Harry tells his son. And in that single sentence, all the weight of history, the bullying, the betrayal, the love, the war, falls into place. The Marauder's tale is a tragedy, but within it, Snape's story is perhaps the most human of all.